Hey, I'm Austin with Training Tall, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest and greatest from Hydrow, the Hydrow Wave. We're going to talk all about how the Hydrow Wave compares to the original Hydrow machine, and basically what Hydrow has been up to so you can decide if Hydrow might be a good option for your rowing option choice. And don't forget, if you're looking for more rowing resources from me, or you want some personal coaching or rowing form reviews, be sure to check out all my links linked down below. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. The Hydrow Wave is a lot smaller than the original Hydrow machine. One of my biggest critiques of the original Hydrow was just how big the machine was. And Hydrow took that feedback and created the Hydrow Wave, which is about 30% smaller overall than the original Hydrow. The original Hydrow weighed about 145 pounds, while the Hydrow Wave clocks in at only 102 pounds. It's about 6 inches shorter in overall length and about 3 inches shorter in overall height. But for us taller users, someone like myself who's 6'8", they did not change the actual rail length. So it still fits up to a 36-inch inseam, just like the original machine. And again, even though the Hydrow Wave is a smaller machine, it still supports up to 375 pounds, just like the original Hydrow does. The screen and monitor that you do everything on the Hydrow with is only 16 inches on the Wave compared to the 22-inch monitor that comes on the original machine. Now, just as a personal preference, while I was using the Hydrow Wave, I discovered I actually liked the smaller screen compared to the big 22-inch screen. But even though the screen is just a little bit smaller, all of the same content is still on the machine, just like on the original machine. As far as the look of the machine goes, while it doesn't have that futuristic look that the original Hydrow does, I gotta say I am a big fan of this like swirled metal finish. I've never really seen this type of color or finish on a machine, and it just looks like a machine that, you know, you get on it and you're ready to work. You're ready to take some strokes. The foot plates are adjustable just like on the original machine. However, I think you can actually get to a smaller foot size on the Hydrow Wave. I mean, you can bring this thing up so high for just like itty bitty feet. So even if you wanted your kids to try out the rower, they could try it and their feet would probably fit. However, even though the foot plates can go up enough for really small feet, I do wish this would go a little bit lower for those that have larger feet. Now, I wear size 14 shoes, so I'm in the minority here, but I generally like to have about 2 inches of my shoe showing on top while I'm rowing, and here I've got about 3 or so. If I had 1 notch lower, it'd be perfect. The foot placement on the machine is nice and wide, just like on the original Hydrow, which is a huge deal. It is important for rowing machines to have foot plates that are wide enough for you to get a nice biomechanical advantage lean forward at the front. And I've always been a fan of the Hydrow handle. It's a nice wide handle with a grip that's very familiar to the Concept 2 rowing machine, with just like a little bit of this rubber plastic combo that just feels really good in your hands. Especially good because the handle's not super thick, it's thinner, but it's sturdier than most rowing machine handles. All right, so now let's get into how the machine actually rows, and probably what you're most curious about, which is how it sounds, because the original Hydrow has a very distinct, sort of high-pitched, I don't want to say whine, but it is kind of a whine due to it being a fully magnetic rower. And I'm happy to report that the Hydrow Wave sounds a lot better. It's overall a lot quieter. It still does have this sort of like electronic-y, magnetic-y type sound. You know what? How about I just row for you? This is what the Hydrow sounds like on the lowest resistance setting. And this is what the Hydrow Wave sounds like on the highest resistance setting. So overall, sounds a lot better than the original Hydrow machine sounds, in my opinion. But I'll leave that up to you to decide. But speaking of resistance settings, I'm out of breath. Speaking of resistance settings, the drag factor, as it's called here on the Hydrow, ranges between 50 and up to 300. And this is something that I've really admired about Hydrow ever since I first reviewed it back a couple years ago is that the resistance settings really can adjust no matter what your fitness level is. If you're looking for something that feels really hard, heavy, intense, that max drag factor setting is really heavy. But on the other side of things, if you're newer or maybe you're older and you're just getting into fitness and you want a lighter resistance, a lighter drag, the low setting is very light. And with there, you have everything in between as well. So that's a huge props to Hydrow for being able to maintain a nice steady curve upwards of adding resistance, it feels heavier. Reducing resistance, it feels lighter, while still keeping the overall feel and flow as authentic as possible. Just a quick note on the storage of this machine. It can store upright just like the original Hydrow does. However, this upright storage sits at kind of an angle outwards rather than just going straight up, which is a little annoying. And as far as moving the TV screen goes, you have to physically pull out this screw thingy to allow the monitor to go down before you put the screw thingy back in. I'm not a tool guy, I don't actually know what that's called. If you know, let me know down in the comments below. But you pull the thing out, you bring the monitor down, you put the thing back in. It's just a little archaic. You know, other rowing machines have fixed this issue by just using a latch or a lever that allows the monitor to go down before locking it in place. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it's a little annoying. And yeah, I wish it was exactly vertical up rather than angled slightly out into the room. But because it's so much lighter and so much smaller than the original machine, it's way easier to maneuver about the room or change the room that it's located in. The original Hydrow is a bit cumbersome in that way, and so this is a big improvement. So with all of this in mind, what's really interesting is that the Hydrow Wave is almost $1,000 less than the original Hydrow machine. But after spending some time on this and having spent time on both machines, I can't see why you wouldn't go with the Wave compared to the original Hydrow. The original machine does have a bigger screen, and it is overall, thicker, bigger, and sturdier. So it will probably last longer mechanically, but that remains yet to be seen. But all of the minor drawbacks of the original Hydrow have been fixed with the Hydrow Wave, and it's cheaper. So I think if it was between these two machines, the original and the Hydrow Wave, I think it's a no-brainer to go with the Hydrow Wave. It's not as big, it's quieter, it supports the same heights, the same weights, and it still gives you access to everything that Hydrow has to offer. Speaking of everything that Hydrow has to offer, I have a lot to say about the state of Hydrow, but I've now decided I'm going to save that for another video. So if you're interested in learning more about what Hydrow has to offer and where Hydrow is today, be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, that way you will know when that video comes up. And of course, I'll have a lot more rowing content coming out as well. And please let me know what you think down in the comments below. But those are my thoughts on the Hydrow Wave compared to the original Hydrow machine. I would love to know your thoughts on rowing, on the Hydrow, what kind of machine you have, what are your thoughts on rowing in general? Let me know down in the comments below. But as always, I will see you in the next video.